The Sony a7 III has by far been my favourite mirrorless camera to work with since getting into the filming world. Now I've shot on Canon, I've shot on Panasonic, and I've even owned the older a7S II and the Sony 6500. But still to this day, I just love everything about this little a7 III. But with all the new cameras coming out over the past 18 months, it's really got me thinking, is this camera still relevant in 2021? So I've been using this camera in all of my projects for over 3 years now. In fact, I loved it so much that I decided to pick up a second one, and it just basically lives on my gimbal. I've shot easily over 500 projects using this camera, from music videos to corporate videos and even making wedding films. So I've 100% put it through its paces. Now in this video, I'm going to help you decide if this is the best camera for you, and also tell you why I think, in my own opinion, why this is one of the best value for money cameras in 2021. Now, for most of the gear talked about in this video, I've actually dropped a link down below where you can check it out, and you can also make a purchase should you decide to. I'm gonna get a small kickback from those links should you decide to buy anything, and it's at no extra cost to you. All right, so when I think of the a7 III, I like to think of it as one of the best hybrid cameras to date, in my opinion anyway. And when I say hybrid, I mean it's the master of none, but it does everything really, really well. It takes incredible photos, and its video capabilities are amazing. Now, a quick overview of the a7. It shoots 4K up to 30 frames per second, which is awesome for that little bit of slow motion. You can slow it down in Final Cut to 80%. It shoots 1080 up to 120 frames per second. It's got 8-bit 420 internal recording. It's a 24 megapixel sensor, eye autofocus, and it also shoots 10 frames per second for shooting sports and animals, so it's going to do a really nice quick burst for you. Personally, I love the look of full frame cameras, and the reason why I prefer the full frame look over the APS-C or the Micro Four Thirds is with the a7 III's full frame, you actually get the best of both worlds. So with the a7 III, Sony have conveniently given you the option to punch into what they call Super 35 mode, and then you can actually crop in on the sensor again with what they call clear image zoom. Now, I'm not really sure for certain if the a7S III can do this. From my research, I don't think you can, and it's not a deal breaker, but it's definitely a bummer when I think about my shooting style using this camera. Having the versatility and convenience on shoots to go between almost 3 different camera looks or lenses is honestly a huge benefit for me. So a great example where this is handy is on weddings. So everything's happening so fast, you really got to be quick on your feet so you don't miss anything. If you need to, get that extra zoom or the extra length on a shot, you would normally have to grab another lens, right? So you'd have to, go to your bag, you'd have to grab your lens out, you're gonna have to take your lens off your other camera and then put your new lens on, switch your camera back on. Chances are you've missed a shot. It's not like you can say, hey guys, hang on a sec. Can you guys do that shot again? Can you guys do that kiss again? It's not gonna happen. So, being able to just stay on, say, your 50mm lens, then punch into Super 35 with just the click of a button, will instantly take you from your 50mm focal length to about, let's say, an 80mm focal length, and all you've done is just click one button. Game changer, in my opinion. Now, you've probably heard all the talk about 45 megapixels or 61 from the new Sonys, and it's got you thinking, isn't bigger better? Well, no, not always anyway. It's how you use it, right? Now, for me personally, 24 megapixels is plenty for the type of photos that I take, and honestly, for most creatives, 24 megapixels is ample too. Now, I'm mainly using this to take photos to share on socials and for some prints. The 24 megapixels, I think, is the sweet spot for keeping those file sizes manageable, as well as giving your computer a chance to just keep up to editing. Trust me, even on those new M1 Max with those big 61 megapixel photos, they're gonna start to slow your system down. Plus, you're gonna have to start investing in more storage just to store your files, and who likes buying storage? Because I hate it. But anyway, I bought this camera back in 2018 when it first came out, and it's really just been a reliable piece of kit. I've invested a lot of money into the Sony ecosystem with buying lenses, with all their accessories, so changing systems for me is not really that simple. But anyway, we're in 2021 and we've seen a lot of new cameras in the market that are boasting that they shoot 10-bit internally. It kind of makes the a7 III feel like it's a little bit insignificant when you're talking about that part of the equation. Alright, so what does 10-bit mean? Basically, the ability to record in 10-bit is going to open up a whole new world in what we can do to push and pull colors when we want to color grade in post. Now, I don't know the exact specs, but I like to think of it like this. So here's a diagram of 8-bit and 10-bit. Up the top we've got 8-bit and down the bottom we've got 10-bit. So you can see if you have a blend between similar colors, you'll get what all the other 8-bit shooters know as what's called banding. Now, a good example is when you're shooting the sky. So instead of it being a nice smooth gradient of blue, you're going to begin to see lines or what we call banding. Now, although this is not a huge issue, it's actually made me rethink my shots a lot more and reframe or light my shots differently just to avoid that banding. Having that 10-bit would really be a huge advantage in my opinion. So the A7 III has no flip screen, and in 2021, that's a bit of a dinosaur, especially with all the other camera brands doing flip screens. And honestly, you know, for most creators, this is super annoying, especially if you're trying to film yourself. Now, although most new cameras come with flip screens, I'm highly unlikely to make the most out of it because I always shoot with an external monitor anyway. And in particular, I shoot with Small HD Focus 5. Now, I've also bought 2 of these and they're relatively cheap now as well. Now, even if I was to purchase another camera, I'd still be using my external monitor. Now, that's just me, and it's something that I've gotten used to, but you know, once you start using this and you see all the features on it, like the focusing is so much easier, to navigate through different settings is so easy. Honestly, when I shoot without this monitor, I kind of feel naked, and I know how most of you probably think, well, you probably like being naked anyway, mate. I can't live without this thing. In terms of slow motion, the A7 III can shoot a max of 30 frames per second at 4K and 120 frames per second at 1080. Now, for most people, that's not really a huge issue. For 95% of my projects, I've been using the A7 III. In fact, even this video is being currently filmed on the A7 III. Truth be told, the 120 frames per second is actually quite soft in 1080 on this camera, but in my opinion, it's still usable if you just nail your exposure. To be honest, I actually don't shoot a lot of slow motion to justify upgrading just yet. As much as that 4K 60 or 120 would be a nice upgrade, at the end of the day, I don't actually think it's going to help me tell a better story. So the next thing to talk about is IBIS. And no, I'm not talking about my bowels, I'm talking about in-body stabilization. Now, the A7 III has a 5-axis in-body stabilization, and while it's not as good as the GH5, it's actually still really, really good, and it makes a huge difference if you're shooting using lenses without image stabilization inside them. I used to have a slider that I carried around everywhere. It was so freaking annoying to have to lug around your tripod and a slider on shoots. I ended up rigging up one of my A7 IIIs and I made it a little bit heavier, and together with, you know, the in-body stabilization and the extra weight, I could actually smash out my B-roll shots way quicker. By the way, if you'd like to check out my video on how I rigged up this little A7 III into what I call a mini red, make sure you're subscribed because I'm going to be making a video on that very shortly, and I'm going to be breaking down all the parts that I used that you can check out and you can build yourself as well. Now, let's talk about battery. Well, in short, these little guys are freaking amazing. And it's a huge upgrade from the older cameras like the A7S II and the 6500 that used those old Sony batteries. They were just freaking horrible. My pants would be falling down from holding on to all these freaking batteries in my pockets. Now, the A7 III uses the new Z-type batteries, and these guys last for ages, even shooting 4K. Between my 2 A7 IIIs on a wedding shoot, I could carry around just 6 of these and they would last the entire wedding. So in terms of affordability, you can pick up an A7 III brand new for about $2,200. On the second-hand market, I've seen them going for about $1,500. Honestly, for the price, I don't think you're going to find another camera on the market that comes anywhere near as close and has all these features inside. As much as I'd love to have all the new features from the S3, you know, that high frame rate, the 10-bit internal recording, personally, I'm going to have to wait a little longer and see what might be on the horizon for the A7 IV. Right now, the price of the S3 is sitting at around $51.45 here in Australia. Plus, I'd also need to upgrade and purchase, you know, the new SD cards just so I can record that 4K 120. Now, if I jump ship to the R5 to Canon, I'd be looking at $53.50, and I'd also need to buy new glass. So for that price, I can honestly buy 2 A7 IIIs brand new. And with the leftover money, I could probably take out my missus for like dinner to like Nando's or something. Okay. I'm not going to put that in actually. I'm going to delete that now before she sees it. Alright, so I can highly recommend this camera to honestly anyone wanting to get into the creative field. I think if you're wanting to get your best bang for buck, you're going to get it with the A7 III, especially if you're wanting to shoot both video and photo both together. Now, with the other cameras like the A7S III and the A7R IV, I think they're more niche. They're suited more to the professional that's just focused on either, just doing video or just doing photo. So what about the A7 IV or the A7C? I think the A7 IV will definitely have more features and it'll be a really nice upgrade to the A7 III. But you know what, if you're thinking about waiting, I don't know, I wouldn't. We've got no idea when Sony will even release the next A7 IV series, and we still don't really know what the confirmed specs are of the A7 IV. But then what about the A7C that's just been released? Now, from what I've been able to see with my short play on it, it's basically identical to the A7 III, in terms of specs anyway. I mean, it's a little bit smaller. It does lack with the amount of custom buttons. I honestly think Sony had the video creator in mind when they were designing the A7C. Okay, so I hope this has helped you make your decision a little easier, and it's given you an insight as to why I think this little A7 III is still relevant purchase in 2021. Either that, or I've confused the heck out of you. Now remember to like, subscribe. If you're new here, turn on those notifications so you don't miss out on my new content. Alright, I'm Daniel, and say hi to your mum for me. Just to avoid banding where I can. Having that 10-bit would...